Erik, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me.
So we're going to talk about Tulip, which is a fast-growing tech company in the Boston tech scene that it's a manufacturing app platform that lets users create apps without writing code. So definitely interesting kind of, how that works in terms of the use cases and how it affects companies. So we're going to get into that. So talk about Tulip. Like, what do you guys actually do, and any, history of the company?
Yeah, so Tulip is an industrial application, uh, no-code app platform. So what this means is it's a place where somebody who's an industrial operations engineer or manufacturing engineer who may have no background with computer science, they might not know how to code, but they can get into this no-code platform. They can build an application that solves very specific problems in their operation. So if you can build a PowerPoint presentation, if you understand if then else logic, then you can use this tool pretty effectively.
And like I've noticed the trend with no code apps. It just seems like that is very front and center across all different industries. But to your point, manufacturing is so underserved in so many different ways. So I imagine the opportunity here is quite significant.
Yeah, massive opportunity. I mean, if you look at industrial operations globally, this employs about 300 million workers globally, which is about 13% of the global labor force. So when you talk about a big problem, I mean, it's big on a scale that like it almost boggles the mind. You know, it's massive. And what's crazy about it, right? This computer that we're talking through, the clothes that we're wearing, everything around you, everything that you're going to interact with today, all this stuff was built somewhere by someone at some point in time. And if you look at the systems that enable the production of this stuff, it's just it's crazy. It's like stepping back in time. Oftentimes it's like going back into 1980. It's largely paper-based processes. When you do interact with systems, they're clunky. They're rigidly defined and hierarchically administered, which is kind of the antithesis of the way that the internet works, right? And so the whole idea behind Tulip is bring these modern tools to the manufacturing operation, to these industrial operations.
Now, as far as your background, like your journey into the tech industry is not a typical one. When I visited your LinkedIn profile, I saw things like special agent Air Force. So talk about your career path to where you are today.
Yeah, I get that. I get that a lot. It's a bit of a non sequitur. It's goes from the military into the startup space. But I mean, if you think about it, so my background, I spent a little time in the nonprofit space. Earlier in my life, primarily based in North Africa for about 3 years, and went on to serve in the military in a variety of intelligence collection roles, particularly human intelligence and counterintelligence operations. And then left that. Did a brief stint in early stage VC before before joining Tulip full time in the early days. But if you think about, while it may feel a bit of a non sequitur, if you think about what are the things and what are the themes that that are important to be successful in my previous military roles, I mean, one, it's operating with very small, high performing teams amid an unbelievably high degree of ambiguity, with a very clear objective, a very clear mission, but the means by which you were going to accomplish that mission are largely left for you to define, the person on the ground with the team, right? And I think if you apply that to a start, and by the way, that's like what I love. That's what I do all day, and then there's a development piece to it that I love as well. Bringing in an early troop and taking on a big scary mission, and then seeing just months later, seeing them, sort of take these missions on their own and bring up the next generation. I mean, that's very satisfying for me personally. But if you apply that to the work that needs to be done in an early stage startup, and this was true of Tulip when it was 5 people, and it's true of Tulip today where there's just north of 100 people. What is it? It's you're operating where the stakes are high. You succeed or fail as a company, right? Where there is an unbelievably high degree of uncertainty. Nobody knows what the future will hold. And where you're operating from a place of constraint, almost the definition of any real startup. You don't have enough money, you don't have enough people, you don't have enough time, you don't have enough tech, the list goes on, right? And despite all of these things, and I think you could even argue because of these things in many ways, you get the job done better than it had been done previously, right? You have to drive and create efficiencies that hadn't been discovered previously because frankly, you don't have the luxury of operating inefficiently, right? And I think the the type of challenges and the type of culture that are able to take those things on and execute successfully are very similar to the type of teams that I led during my military time. And it's, I got to tell you, it's a ton of fun.
So talk about Tulip's growth. Like you guys are hiring for a bunch of different roles across many different functional areas. So talk about kind of the growth plans ahead.
Yeah, yeah. So today we're just north of 100 folks today, and I think if when you look at Tulip's growth, it's not helpful to look at what we are today. I think like the helpful place is to look at what market are we operating in, what product, what problem are we solving, and then what is the scope and scale of a company that will have sufficiently addressed that problem. And to give a little bit of context, if you look at industrial operations globally, it employs about 300 million people globally, which is about 13% of the global labor force. Massive, massive, massive problem that is being experienced by literally hundreds of millions of people, right? So if you look at, great, we built a technology that we've seen solve these problems across a variety of different verticals. I think today we're in like 23 different countries actively in operations. But if you look at the type of scale that sufficiently addresses this issue, this is a company of several thousands of people, right? And it'll take us some time. And frankly, we're always in a rush, but we're not going to grow faster than we should or than is prudent. But I mean, at the time scale of 10 years, 15 years, there are, I think, thousands of people working at Tulip. And I think we have offices globally, right? We already have an office in Munich. We have a team in London. We're, have folks distributed across the US. So, let's draw the line from north of 100 people today to thousands of people down the road. I mean, there's lots of scaling and lots of growing to do, and we've seen incredible traction in the market of our products. So, we're at a point where we're, in a sense, off to the races.
So what's it like working at the company? Like what's the day to day like at Tulip?
Yeah, well, we it's an intense place. We have a lot to do, right? So we work hard and we play hard. I think culturally, if I take a step back, what are some of the attributes that enable people to accomplish the objectives that I've outlined a little bit, in particular, while everyone, we've transitioned the whole company to work from home, work remote, and we operationally haven't missed a beat. So I guess I'm one, very proud of that and very proud of Tulip. But two, like how does that happen? I think some of the cultural attributes that enable that type of transition are, one, there's a very high degree of trust. We don't bring people on board unless we are 100% confident in that person's ability to like get in, get the job done, define priorities, work, build relationships laterally, north and south, very quickly. And the people at Tulip, they're self-starters. They look around, they identify problems, and then they take initiative to solve those problems while communicating transparently with the folks around them. So it creates this very decentralized problem-solving machine, if you will, right? So I think one, very high trust. Two, there's a lot of independence. And so, people, if they see a problem, they say, hey, I need to take this on because it's important. The default assumption is that they're probably right, and we should probably take that very seriously, right? So I think another attribute that is pretty important is Tulip is 100% a meritocracy. So I've got people who have been here for a couple of months. I've got people who have been here for several years. And when you sit down to debate the merit of an idea, how their tenure with the company or whatever position they held prior to coming to the company is almost irrelevant, right? Relevant only in the effect that if there's learnings to be had from previous experiments, there's merit there, but that's the extent of it. And then I think what accompanies that is there's no pride of ownership, right? I mean, the goal, we're all singularly focused on solving this problem. If I have an idea and then somebody else has a better idea, we go with that idea. And as soon as we decide that that's the right idea, it doesn't matter where it came from. It's now our idea, and we build from there, right? So it's a very critical place where any idea that's put forth is going to be examined critically, but it's a place where there is it is collaborative in nature, and we're all working toward the same end state, right?
Well, if you are interested in exploring opportunities at Tulip, you can check out all their job listings. As I mentioned before, they're hiring across pretty much every functional area in the company. So go to venturefizz.com/tulip and you'll see all their job listings there. Eric, thanks so much for taking the time to walk us through all the things you guys are up to at Tulip.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I hope you enjoyed this video. At VentureFizz, our mission is to share the stories of companies, their people, and culture. So if you're interested in more interviews with founders and executives in the tech industry, make sure you click on the subscribe button. Thanks so much for watching.